Hey folks, this is Kalani. There are some huge changes to how talents are going to work in Dragonflight this week, and the result has been quite controversial. We'll be able to swap our talents anywhere we want, but there's going to be a catch. We also have a new patch to look forward to for Shadowlands Patch 9.2.7, which includes quite a few changes for how the auction house is going to work going forward, which might be one of the larger updates to the auction house we've seen in quite a while, and it's definitely going to shake things up as we head into Dragonflight. There's quite a bit to talk about, so let's break it all down. Before we jump in, be sure to hit up that like button and subscribe so you never miss another video. The first big change I want to talk about in this video is for talents, specifically how you can change and swap your talents around. For the longest time, you've only been able to swap your talents while in a rested area, either by actually being in a rested area or by using a tome from Inscription to give you a buff for a very short duration to skip the physical rested area requirement. Dragonflight introduces some massive changes to talents. Not only do we once again have large trees to work through, but we can also save talent loadouts. So instead of going through point by point, taking things away, changing where points go, and finally getting to that different build, you know, maybe for PvP or single target raids versus ad focused raids or Mythic plus dungeons, chances are you're going to want to swap at least a few things around. So instead of having to do that point by point, you can save different loadouts and then just immediately swap your trees around. But this new build introduced something interesting. We can now change our talents anywhere, anytime. The rested requirement was completely removed. So if you're out in the world, or partway through a raid, maybe before the trash or the next boss, or maybe you just don't like how something is working in your current dungeon run, you can swap whatever you want, no matter where you are, without even needing to use a tome. So that's a really cool change. I honestly expected this change to come through with the talent loadouts. The rested area requirement does feel very outdated and needlessly restrictive, especially when you can't change anything in combat or competitive based content like Mythic plus dungeons, already having talent swapping restrictions in place. So if you can't change talents in the areas of the game where it could be abused, why is the rested requirement still a thing? Personally, I'm happy to see it removed. The freedom of swapping anywhere, anytime is fantastic, and it's only going to improve the overall talent system, especially when we have these larger trees to work with and lots of loadouts we're going to want to swap between. While you're building these trees, you're also probably going to be wanting to swap one point here or there just to test things out, and carrying around a sack of tomes or needing to find a resting spot every time you want to try out just one different talent point has always been annoying, but if these changes stick around, that annoyance could be a thing of the past. This change also allows you to craft and change your talent tree saved presets anywhere in the world as well, which was previously limited to rested areas. So if you wanted to play with talent setups, different saved presets, and see when and where you might want to take different talents for different situations, you know, basically just test things out, but save your testing builds to either swap back and forth or just build upon later. You can now also do that anywhere in the world, so you don't have to hole up in Stormwind or Ogrimmar to do all of this testing, and it basically just gives you so much more freedom when it comes to playing with the new talent trees. But as with any change made these days, it seems like there's always a bit of a compromise. Alongside these talent swap changes, the dev team also added in a cast time. No, I'm not kidding. So this cast time is very pervasive. It happens when you try to do pretty much anything with your talents. So if you want to swap one talent point to a different node and want to save and lock in those changes, that now has a cast time. If you want to swap between your different talent presets, that also has a cast time. This makes a little bit of sense to me. I guess the dev team doesn't want us running around instantly swapping talents back and forth, especially when we're either just exiting or just before entering combat. I imagine it could have some weird interactions with world PvP, but more than anything, I guess they just want talent switching out in the world to be more of an investment, even if that investment is literally just standing still for a few seconds. It's definitely adding in friction where it doesn't necessarily need to be, and it's definitely going to be annoying until you somewhat get used to it, but I think it's a relatively fair compromise for the ability to swap our talents anywhere in the world without having to rely on a rested area, and that would almost be fine if the cast time was also limited to non-rested areas, but it isn't. This cast time is also present in rested areas right now, and that's intended according to the dev team. While I can somewhat understand the implementation of a cast time for non-rested areas, despite not really liking it at all, I honestly think it's a really dumb idea to have a cast time present when you're in a rested area. Rested areas are supposed to be where you can more freely swap things around, right? Where we can experiment, where the friction is lessened, and where we can really just dig into the nitty-gritty of what we want to set up, where we want our talents, saving as many presets as we can cram into this new system, and just tinkering to our heart's content. But having a cast time on your talent swaps, preset swaps, and spec swaps is going to make things very tedious. It's not like it's a massive time sink or it takes that long, but coming from instant talent swaps in rested areas to slow talent swaps in rested areas feels really bad, and I think it would be a bit of a blemish on an otherwise very interesting talent system. I also just don't think it's necessary. You can argue back and forth on this point all day, and you may have more standing when it comes to a free talent swap out in the world, but you don't have to add in a negative compromise every time you implement something that benefits the player. Just because freely swapping in the world is better than what we have in retail WoW, it doesn't mean that you then have to add something in that makes it worse as a compromise. You can add good things without trying to balance it to make it less fun, or less ideal, or less convenient. But then again, Blizzard and balance haven't exactly been a great combination recently. It would also be perfect from a gameplay perspective if a rested area still held value, in this case to remove the cast time required on swapping talents or presets. That would encourage players to go back to the cities if they really want to mass test talents or setups, and it could also give tomes some inherent value in a world where you can swap talents anywhere. If a rested area removes the cast time, a tome could do the same thing. Sure, that kind of defeats the whole point of having a cast time in the first place if you can bypass it so easily, but it would give scribes some extra value, and the tome is removing a small time cost barrier instead of a large time cost barrier, which makes them less of a required commodity and more of a high efficiency commodity. I'm kind of surprised that the cast time was implemented in rested areas to begin with, but hopefully with enough feedback we can keep the change your talents everywhere part while getting instant talent swaps back in one form or another. But I am super interested in what you think about this topic. Would you rather have the ability to change your talents anywhere you want, but have a cast time on the swap, or would you rather have it like it is in retail, where you can only swap talents in a rested area or with a tome? If you can't get the best of both worlds, which one would you rather have? Let me know in the comment section below. Either which way, I still think it's more than feasible to have the best of both worlds here, and I think Blizzard would be silly to restrict themselves to just one or the other. Moving on, patch 9.2.7 arrives this very next reset, so that goes live on August 16th or August 19th, depending on your region, and it has a couple of interesting changes, mainly focused on the auction house. To start with, the auction house will now have region-wide commodity listings. This includes things like gems, herbs, flasks, and consumables. Honestly, the vast majority of the auction house and the largest flow of materials will fall under this category. The main stuff that isn't included are things like armor and weapons, as well as a handful of other items that aren't traded quite as often. With commodities becoming region-wide, that means everyone on the same region will have access to the same listings. This is going to create some interesting ripple effects because you'll have significantly more supply and more demand, but it's averaged across an entire region. I think it's pretty much just going to feel like everyone is on a high population realm as far as auctions go, which is a good thing in my opinion, but you may feel differently. Either way, it will be very interesting to see how this change affects auction prices as we move into a brand new expansion, because you know everything speeds up dramatically whenever a new expansion comes out. Everyone is trying to sell for the best price, everyone is trying to buy to progress through their professions, and Dragonflight also includes an entire system overhaul for professions, so everyone will have some investment in the auction house. It's gonna be great. In addition to those auction house changes, we'll see the return of the mobile auction house. The WoW mobile app has been updated a handful of times over the years, and we used to have access to a mobile auction house, but sadly that was retired until now. Through the WoW companion app, you'll be able to browse and view current auctions, bid and buy out auctions, search for auctions, add and remove items from your favorites list, as well as view and cancel your listed auctions. Now you may note that listing auctions is not included, and apparently it might be considered for the future, but for right now it was not enabled to essentially bring back the mobile auction house faster. So they're going to see how it goes for now. If anybody's actually going to use it, they're going to look at player usage, risk and other factors as they decide how to move forward and update the functionality later on. So you can do almost everything except list and sell stuff, but that might return at a later date. I guess as a kind of precaution for things messing up, every auction will also be cancelled as this patch is going live on Tuesday. So if you usually post up all your auctions before reset or something like that, it won't matter for this coming patch day. Everything will get cancelled and sent back to you to make way for the new auction house changes. So if you end up with a whole bunch of mail on patch day, that's probably why. This patch will also include the trade services channel. It's basically another trade channel, except its sole purpose is to be used for boosting. Whether it's dungeon runs, raid clears or PvP rated carries, this new channel is where every service should be contained to. That means if you are still advertising your services, it should be in this channel going forward, or you will probably get muted and banned repeatedly. If you don't want to see any of the boosting chatter, you can hide or leave the channel, and the original trade chat should go back to being about trading goods rather than trading boosts. And then while it's not entirely part of the small patch coming, there will also be some big changes for PvP on August 16th as well. For starters, the conquest cap is being removed. This is much earlier than typical, which isn't too surprising considering Valor didn't even start with a cap this season, so the conquest cap being removed early makes sense, especially when you also take into account that this season is supposed to be shorter than usual. So if you've been hard capped on your conquest grind due to that conquest cap, it will now be completely open, so you can farm and grind as much as you want and gear up as quickly as you can earn conquest, which is always more fun in my opinion. We'll see how it turns out and if it causes any knock-on effects or problems with gearing in general, but hopefully it's going to be really good for all you PvPers out there. In addition to the cap being removed, the Spoils of War buff will be returning as well. This buff increases your conquest gains by 25% and your honor gains by 40%, and it will be active for the rest of Season 4. So not only are you no longer limited by a conquest cap, but you can farm and grind your PvP currencies way faster. This might make PvP one of the faster ways to gear up in this season, at least up until a point. It's going to depend on your rating and ability to climb the ladder, I guess. And then the last change for PvP is the solo queue shuffle. The minimum item level floor has been increased to 278, up from 252, meaning you'll have much better geared players in general. And then to round out this video, if you're curious about what new content we have to look through for the Dragonflight Alpha this week, we actually have some interesting bits and pieces. There are 2 new dungeons to test, the Azure Vault and Brackenhide Hollow. Both are pretty fun to play through, introduce some interesting new story elements, and add to our total pool of Dragonflight dungeons. A few classes have their talent trees enabled. The Warlocks and Holy Paladins are the big ones this time, so if you've been waiting to see if Warlocks are going to continue their overpowered streak, the wait is over. There's a new zone to romp around, the Anaran Plains. It looks really cool from what I've seen so far, and I believe this area has a big green dragonfly influence, so it'll be fun to explore the open plains and uncover some more dragon secrets. Both tailoring and engineering have been enabled, so we can see how they are shaping up in the new profession overhaul. And then there have also been a lot of class changes and balance tuning pushed through this latest build, so we're getting closer and closer to that beta stage, where everything should be available for testing, and we can see big picture how the expansion is starting to shape up. This latest zone is also the last zone that needs testing, and more than half of the dungeons have been tested at this point, so we're getting there slowly but surely. We might have some separate videos covering some of these alpha topics coming soon, so stay tuned for those. But that's it for this video. What do you think of the talent changes? Is a cast time worth the trade-off of being able to swap talents anywhere at any time? Leave all your thoughts in the comment section below. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon and to everyone who subscribed on Twitch. You can see the names floating by on screen. If you want to see more videos like this, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss another video. Thanks for watching, folks. Good luck and have fun, and as always, I'll see you next time.